Welcome back. As soon as I can get my dog out of the room, I'm going to show you some of my favorite warm-up and mobility exercises. Welcome to Integrated Wellness Warrior, where we believe in building a strong body, a clear mind, and a whole life. I'm Malia, a personal trainer and social worker, and here we integrate physical fitness with mental well-being to help you become your healthiest, happiest self. Hi, welcome back. I'm here in my home workout area, and today I want to show my full warm-up and mobility routine. I've done this before every workout for, probably 7-8 years now. And it really runs through pretty much all of the large muscle groups and all of the joints that I use, because I do so many compound movements in my workouts that I'm involving multiple muscles and multiple joints. And I just want to make sure that everything is moving well before I get in there and get under a barbell or start lifting anything heavy. Despite me currently having an injury, over my lifting career, I've managed to stay mostly pain-free. Knock on wood, I don't have any knee pain. I don't really have any shoulder pain. And I attribute that to really focusing on mobility for such a long time. So full disclosure, this entire warm-up usually takes me about 25 to 30 minutes. And I know that seems like a lot if you only have an hour to dedicate to your workout. So if that's the case for you, feel free to pick and choose any of this if you want to try it, if you feel like it's helpful for your workout. And then sometimes there are days like I'm really pressed for time and I might take out a few things, like some of the hip openers if I know I'm just doing bench press or whatever. But I really do try to do pretty much all of these movements every time I go to the gym. And I know it seems like a lot, but I once heard that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson warms up for 50 minutes before his workouts, which are so grueling, of course. But he said as he got older, he just felt like he needed that time to really fully warm up to minimize the chance of any injury. So I, of course, want to be injury free, but I also want to be moving well for a long time, even into old age. So I am making these investments in my future self by banking all this time on a foam roller and on a mat doing mobility work. So I'm going to show you what my warm-up and mobility workout looks like every time I work out. Feel free to pick and choose if you think anything might be helpful for you. So I always start every workout with some foam rolling. Foam rolling is a great way to loosen up your connective tissue, loosen up any adhesions that might be limiting your mobility. I usually start here with piriformis. You roll around kind of on the side of your glute, and when you get to your piriformis, you'll know it, because if you're like me, it is always tight. So I do both sides here. I also make sure that I roll both quads. This foam roller is one of the really short ones, so I have to do one leg at a time. If I have a larger one, I will do both legs at a time, just kind of rolling around at different angles to hit all 4 of those quad muscles. I always make sure I get both sides. So you can tell here I had to switch to the other side because this foam roller is really short. Make sure that I pay attention to the area just above the knees, but definitely do not roll over your kneecaps. That would be pretty painful. After that, I like to open up my thoracic spine. I pay a lot of attention to thoracic spine, and this is one of my favorite ways to do it. So you're going to grasp that foam roller between your knees and really squeeze, and then lay one hand out, and I call it open the book and close the book. So you're going to want to try to keep that upper back pretty flat on the floor. You can see there I've got my left shoulder making contact with the floor the whole time, and I'm going to try to get my upper back to make connection there, but my back was pretty tight this day and it was pretty hard to get there. Just make sure you're squeezing as much as you can. Then I start to work on my core. I never do a workout without doing these 3 movements. These come from Dr. Stuart McGill, who is probably the leading expert in back injury rehab exercises. So these are called the McGill Big 3. So here I'm doing a curl up exercise. You can see I'm barely lifting my head off the floor. Everything else is staying straight. Very little movement anywhere else. What I'm trying to just do is get a little contraction there in the front of my abdominal muscles. Very small movement, but very effective. There are two other movements that are part of this. The second one I modify a little bit just to kind of suit what's going on with my situation. And here you can see I'm going into a side plank. Usually you would do that with both legs out straight, but because I'm really working on strengthening my glutes after my injury, I do this kind of like square-legged one. And I really want to emphasize I'm really pushing forward with my glutes, trying to push my hips really far forward. So it's a core movement and glutes. This one is one of my favorites, the bird dog. You're alternating, reaching with that arm and leg. And it's not just about lifting them up. It's about reaching like somebody is pulling on your hand and pulling on your leg and just trying to rip you apart. So imagine trying to touch that toe to the back wall, touch your hand to the front wall. And this really helps the core to learn to resist, like a twisting or any sideways motion. And it's not about getting that arm and leg up high. It's about getting back and forth as far as you can. Okay, then I'm going to move into some low back movements. Always trying to strengthen my poor lower back. So here we call these Superman. So arms and legs are on the ground, and it's almost like you're doing a reverse crunch. You're using like your low back muscles, almost like you would use your ab muscles in a crunch, just to lift off the floor very, very slightly. The next one that I like to do, this one is an alternating. This one I call a swimmer. Now I've got opposite arm, opposite leg coming off the floor at the same time, keeping a nice neutral spine. Neck is neutral. I'm looking at the floor. There's not much to look at, but I want to keep my spine safe. Giving a little squeeze in the glute as you're raising that leg up, trying to stay pretty flat. Then I go into a press up. This was one of the first movements I could do right after I injured my back, and I could only go about that far. As I started getting better, I was able to push my hands back and curl up a little bit higher each time. Here, I was able to get my arms locked out and be able to press up, and I was still pain-free, which was really, really good for me that day. So just use whatever you're able to that day, and you're not putting yourself in any pain, but just opening up the front body and getting a little flex on the back there. Last one I want to do here, this one is kind of for low back and warms up my shoulders. So I can't show both sides because I did not have enough room on that side, but I am kind of doing this snow angel motion, I guess that's what you would call it, where I turn that hand away from me on the way down, and then I turn it up on the way back up. So this is really warming up my rotator cuff and lower back. And then I move on to glute movements, just a regular old glute bridge, feet super flat on the floor. Squeeze those glutes and driving the hips up. This also does a lot to really warm up my lower back. Just gets my pelvis kind of going into anterior and posterior tilt a little bit. And then any glute strengthening I definitely need to work on. So this one is called the Cook Hip Lift. So I'm driving with my left foot to get my right hip and knee off the floor as far as I can. And all of these, I'm going to make sure I hit both sides. Let me get the other side now. I've noticed it's been harder for me to get my hips as far off the ground as I used to. And I think that is attributed to glute weakness after this injury. So here I'm going to do, it's kind of a one-legged hip bridge, and I'm trying to just shoot that leg straight up toward the ceiling, keeping that foot flat, going straight up and down as much as possible, but it's pretty tough. Next one I want to do here, I grabbed a TheraBand. This one is really tight, so I wasn't able to get a lot of motion here, but I'm going to do that glute bridge, but now I'm trying to separate my knees from each other on each one, so that just kind of squeezes those glute medius, glute min on the side there, just getting full glute warm up, because I need them for pretty much every activity I do at the gym. Okay, last one. I feel like this one is kind of overlooked, those old glute clamshells. I do mine a little bit differently. I keep the bottom leg straight and I roll over slightly so that my top leg is kind of over and in front of the bottom one. So I'm fighting gravity a little bit more as I open up that clamshell. So you can see I'm really trying to work glute medius there on the side, keeping that leg straight, and then you can see that I roll forward so that I'm fighting gravity, and I just make this a little bit more challenging on my glutes. Then I'm going to put that band away, and I get out my big thick rubber band and start doing some glute stretching. So here you could use like a yoga strap if you don't have a big rubber band. The stretchy part isn't really important. I just need something to kind of facilitate that stretching. My hamstrings are super, super tight. Calves and ankles have always been really tight. I don't usually do a ton of static stretching, but this is one that I do every workout. just to really feel that burn, feel that kind of loosening up in my hamstring. After I do just a straight leg one on each side, then I start to get some foot and ankle movement. So I'm trying to dorsiflex and plantar flex my foot as much as I can on each motion to really just get some movement there in my ankles. Ankle mobility is so, so important, especially for squatting. And I did not pay enough attention to my ankles for many years, and I think that that is a part of some of my challenges now with my squats. And when one part of the body is not mobile, things are going to cause problems up and down the chain. So pay attention to your feet, pay attention to your ankles. So after I've done those foot and ankle on each side, I love doing this one. This one is more about my thoracic spine, that mid back again, and feeling that crossover with that leg as it twists over feels really, really good on my mid back and just gets that moving. Because my low back is so tight, I've got to make sure that my mid back stays mobile, so that my low back does not get hypermobile, which is what we actually don't want. That low back is supposed to be pretty stable. So I couldn't show you on both sides because I am too close to the wall, but the other one I do is now I hook it on this leg, and I'm not crossing my body with this, but just opening that out to the side while my upper body is flat on the ground. And you're going to feel a really, really nice stretch down those muscles of your inner thigh. Last one I do, I am calling this hamstring work just because I do it kind of with those exercises. But what this does is really, really get some internal rotation on those hips and feels so good on my back. Last one, remember I said I pay a lot of attention to my ankles. So this one does a few things. This opens up the hip, especially of the knee that's on the ground, and then keep that foot in front super flat. Don't let your heel come off the ground. And this is working to build ankle mobility. I know I am lacking in it. Many of us are. So I never, ever skip this movement. I make sure that I hit both sides. So while I'm getting the ankle of one side, I'm getting the hip of the other. So it's kind of a bang for your buck activity. And I really try to some days like get in this position and do these rockers for maybe like 2 minutes on each side if I have time that day, because I see such a difference in my squats. I see a huge difference in deadlifts when I do these movements really regularly. You can also get a little bit of a hamstring stretch as you go even deeper in those. Next one, this is called stir the pot. So I've got foot, hand all in a line. I'm using that back ankle because now I'm getting ankle mobility as well, but also opening up in this one, it's my right hip. So while I'm in this position, I'm going to now go into a thoracic spine opener, raising that hand, keeping everything else on the ground. This is all mid back, opening up, getting more mobile. And after I'm at work all day, these movements just feel so good on my lower back. So I'm going to do stir the pot again on this side, again working those ankles, but also opening the hip. Make sure you go in both directions on both sides. Then again, I'm going to do that thoracic spine opener, keeping that mid back mobile, ready to move, flexible. And I'm trying to get my hand back really as far as I can. Keep your eyes on your hand the whole time you do that. This one is another thoracic spine opener. It's a little tough if you your back is tight like mine. You should be able to get that elbow past pointing at the ceiling. It should be a little bit behind you. Keep your eyes on your elbow as you do this. Keep your low back and pelvis as flat and still as possible. So I'm going to try again on this side. I notice a huge difference between my right and left side as well. So I'm working to address that. But just pay attention to things like that in yourself where you notice asymmetry. One side is tighter than the other, or you've got like impaired range of motion on one side. That's really something that is a cue that that's something that you need to work on. So this is another way that it just allows me to open up a little bit more on this. I get a little bit more range of motion when I kick out that opposite leg to the opposite side. You can see I get my elbow up a little higher. I would do the same thing on the other side, but I think I just didn't have room there. So then I like to end with this one. This gets a really good stretch down the inner thigh. Again, opens hips, but also gets a little bit of wrist flexibility, which you don't think about too often, but for things like bench press, overhead press, you really need to make sure those are warmed up too. I do all these multi-joint movements and we can't leave anything out. And then I've got these shoulder movements. So it looks like I'm doing a push-up, but my elbows are locked. So the only thing moving here is really my scapulas. So I'm getting just warming up rotator cuffs, shoulders, especially things like bench press, overhead press. And then I also get some circles in there too. This is really hard, but just make sure you keep your elbows locked if that's what you're going to do. So that's really my whole warm up. You've seen the whole thing from start to finish. So let me know if you give any of these a try, if they work for you, if you find that you feel better, have a better workout. Let me know in the comments. I'll see you